Okay, hello everybody. So I'm Valérie Leprince from Cerema, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to present this ventilation information paper on ventilation in France. So we have been doing this paper together with Laure Mouradian from CETIAT and also Gaël Guyot from Cerema, but I will be the one presenting it today. So in France, so we basically follow the same structure as what the Italian presentation has been doing, more or less. In France, we are about 68 million inhabitants and 37.2 million dwellings in 2022, and 50% of them were built before 1974. This is an important information because regarding ventilation in France, basically everything happened at the beginning of the 80s and nothing has changed since then. So we've got the same system for almost 40 years, for more than 40 years now. So in 2023, we had 60,000 new single-family home and 205 multi-family buildings. 75% of people live in houses and 21% in apartments. So that's basically what our building stocks looks like. So as I said, we were quite early in France with our regulation of ventilation in residential buildings because our regulation is from 1982. Basically, at that time, it said, okay, we need to have a continuous air renewal in dwellings to avoid to control moisture, basically. And for that, we need to put air inlet in all main rooms. So that means bedroom, living rooms, and everything, and bedroom and living room. And we need to have exhaust in all humid rooms. So that means bathroom, kitchen, etc. And this flow rate should be maintained continuously in the building. So the amount of flow rate that you need to be able to achieve depends on the number of main rooms that you've got in your building. We have no requirement on a flow rate to supply in bedroom. We just need to have air inlet in bedroom and living rooms. So, for example, for a 3-room apartment, you need to be able to have at least 105 cubic meter per hour in the kitchen, 30 cubic meter per hour in bathroom with toilet, and 15 cubic meter per hour in other humid room. And you are allowed to decrease this nominal flow rate to 75 cubic meter per hour in the kitchen when you are not cooking, actually. In 1983, so 1 year later, there was the introduction of demand control ventilation systems that were allowed, that have been made allowed by the regulation. So it's mostly humidity-based demand control ventilation that we've got in France since 1983. To actually install the system, so arrêté du 24 mars 82 is the regulation. This is the law, but to actually install the system, we have got a national standard, which is DTU 68.3. It's explain how to install ventilation system in every residential building, so it's kind of straightforward to do it. One thing important is that cooker hood are not mandatory in France. They are assumed not to be needed thanks to this 2-stage flow rate that we've got in the kitchen for cooking period and not cooking period. So actually we mostly have recirculation cooker hood now to comply with the energy performance requirement on air tightness, because if you install an extract cooker hood to the outdoor, it's usually quite difficult to achieve the requirement on air tightness that we've got since 2013 now in residential buildings. So if, we give the example of a house of 90 square meters with 2.5 1 main room, 3 bedroom, we will basically have 30 cubic meter per hour in the bathroom, 30 cubic meter in the toilet if it's just one toilet in the house, 45 cubic meter in the kitchen. That should be able to reach 120 cubic meter per hour. And in case of demand control ventilation, you are allowed to reduce to 30 to 50% the flow rate that you get you will reduce in average 30 to 50% the average flow rate, and so you are able to take that into account into the energy performance calculation. So that's why most buildings now have a humidity-based demand control ventilation system new residential buildings. So that was for residential building. For non-residential buildings, the regulation is even older because it's from the work code and the Règlement sanitaire départemental from 1979. There is a small mistake here. The RSDT is from 1979. The work code is slightly younger. So actually the regulation was before the fact that we are now, it's of course forbidden to smoke anywhere in public spaces. So we still have in a regulation what flow rate we should put if we are allowed to smoke in the building. You see here that those are very small flow rates. So in school, for example, it's only 15 cubic meter per hour per occupant that we need to install in school. There are some specific requirements for bathroom and things like that. And one thing is that the ventilation can be stopped, contrary to residential building where it needs to be maintained continuously. In non-residential building, it can be stopped. And it's even, well, recommended by the energy performance calculation. So, and there is also no standards to actually describe how to implement a ventilation system in non-residential buildings. So no specific standard for France. Of course, European standards apply, but they are not mandatory. So yes, if you've got a classroom of 50 square meters with 25 students and 1 teacher, the teacher is allowed to have a little more air than the youngest one. So you would add 25 for the teacher and add 25 times 15 for the youngest, and which would make 400 cubic meter per hour in the classroom, basically. And if you've got enough windows in the classroom, it's actually allowed to do airing instead of ventilation by opening the windows. So before the energy performance regulation from 2000, basically most schools were built without ventilation system, only relying on windows opening to do the air renewal. Now we do have ventilation system for energy performance reasons, but it's still not really mandatory in our regulation. So yeah, as I was saying, the energy performance regulation has set new guidelines for low energy building, all the more in the last one in 2020. So it's now impossible to have a building without ventilation system in non-residential buildings. So now, of course, all buildings get a ventilation system, but still with those very small flow rates, which are probably not enough to actually maintain a good indoor air quality. Demand control ventilation system are promoted. Yes, for existing building, we've got some subsidies, a bit like in Italy. We've got MaPrimeRénov' that will push for heat recovery system in refurbishment. And we now in energy performance certificates that you need to produce when you sell or rent a house, there is now a general information on the ventilation system that is installed in the building. That's not a lot, but at least it gives some information. So now if we look at your stock, so as I say, for almost 30 years now, it's only humidity-based demand control ventilation systems that are installed, well, for more than 90% of buildings. So it's centralized ventilation, extract-only ventilation. Each recovery system only represents 3 to 4% of new dwellings. In the existing stock, we've got 42% now of building with an overall mechanical ventilation system. 31% have a room-by-room ventilation. It's not allowed by the regulation for new buildings, but in refurbishment, it's quite usual to install those kind of system. 17% with overall natural ventilation and only 10% without ventilation at all. It was in 2017, so it has improved probably since then. In non-residential building, we only have very old figure from 2007, so it's a bit old, but you see that, yeah, for example, for school building, we still had 60% of school without any ventilation system, and 50% of office, 40% of shop. Thankfully, in healthcare building, we have a bit more ventilation system. Regarding inspection trends, so we found out that even though our regulation is very old and we have been doing the same thing for a lot of time, still we had 50% of ventilation systems that were not meeting the regulation requirements, 70% for houses. So since the new regulation, so RE 2020, so has been, it came into force in 2022, basically, there is a new requirement. Every new residential building needs to go through an inspection of the ventilation system done by a certified inspector. So they focus on the performance of the system, make a visual inspection, check the airflow, and all the data need to be put in a database, which is Observatoire National de la Ventilation. So it's an online database where you can actually check that the buildings are now compliant to the regulation regarding the ventilation. So I won't say much more on this because we will have a specific webinar on those database later on this year. For non-residential building, there is no real mandatory inspection. There is one in office building, but that's it. But protocol exists, and we do hope that with the new EPBD, we member states, so France, that is of course a European member state, will have to actually enforce this new requirement of the EPBD and make requirement on the inspection of non-residential buildings. So what we hope for the future, basically, we should move to performance-based regulation in residential buildings. The texts are ready. We just happen not to have any government right now, but at some point we will. So we do hope we will have the performance-based regulation coming into force for residential buildings soon. So the idea is to offer an alternative to prescriptive requirement and having target for CO2 level, humidity, proxy pollutant level to assess the performance in terms of indoor air quality rather than in terms of flow rate. The COVID also had an impact on the general consideration that people have on ventilation. So we got what we call the High Council for Public Health has sorted a recommendation for the government saying, okay, we should modify the codes in non-residential building, follow 16798-1, which is basically multiplying by 2 the flow rate that we've got in school. So we hope that this will bring some new regulation for non-residential buildings. So yeah, just as a conclusion, so France has a strong regulatory framework for ventilation in residential building, but face some challenge in non-residential one, and face some challenge with the non-compliance of this building on site. Air renewal in non-residential building like existing schools still mainly relies on opening the windows, which is also a problem because when we open the windows it's cold, so they don't actually open the windows during the winter. With the new energy performance regulation, we've got mandatory inspection of ventilation system. We've got new requirement on energy efficiency that actually make it mandatory to install ventilation system, which is a good thing. So innovation, of course, is expected with the shift toward performance-based regulation. Here are some publications that have been used to make this VIP. Of course, you can download the VIP 48.2 on the AIVC website. I guess you are all familiar with that. It's free and you can have access to it. Thank you for your attention.